you so much for joining us today and for supporting the WIN Awards program. My name is Winnie Shee, and I'm the chair of the WIN Awards Marketing Communications Committee, as well as the BC chapter. As this is a national event, I wanted to take some time today to acknowledge the traditional lands on which each of us are currently gathered. The 2020 COVID pandemic has affected everybody, and most of us have been very fortunate in that the technology has been able to facilitate us into a new working environment, to one that's working virtually. And one of the things that it's easy to do as we're working from our home offices is that we forget about promoting diversity. In fact, if you step back and think about it, working remotely has highlighted many of the challenges that we have with respect to diversity. The 2021 awards is just as important, if not more important, than the WIN Award programs of prior years. It's not just about submitting a name and hoping that your nominee wins. It's about public recognition of the achievements that many of the phenomenal women right across Canada have made in the field of infrastructure. And it provides a visible demonstration of why it is important to continue to promote the diversity agenda. So the WIN Awards Committee encourages all of you to get involved in the 2021 awards. Look through your network, identify fantastic women who have made significant contributions. I know there's many, and put in a nomination. Get involved through social media, promote WIN, promote the WIN Awards program on LinkedIn, through Twitter, through Instagram. It really is through all of our involvement that will start moving the needle on the diversity. On that note, a couple of important announcements concerning the awards. One, you may have seen this already, the nominations deadline has now been extended to Monday, February the 15th. That gives you a whole month to get those nomination packages in. And a reminder to all the nominees about the optional video component this year. Now, while this will not be part of the formal evaluation process, we do encourage all of you to consider submitting some digital collateral for us to use. Because we are still working remotely, it is really hard to promote your achievements in person. So we really have to rely on being able to do this virtually, and whether or not we use that or extracts of your video through social media or as part of their wonderful professionally done WIN videos, it does provide us with a means for us to promote the many achievements that all of you have made. Just before we get started on the panel, a couple of reminders on tech that Ashley has gone through. For those of you who have not done so already, there is a button on the top right-hand corner called Layout. If you click on that and select Grid View, you'll be able to see all of the panelists at one time. And if you also click on that and select Don't Show, non-video participants, that'll enhance your video experience. On the bottom right corner, you will see 3 dots. If you click on that, you'll be able to click Q&A. You can submit any questions you have through that channel. The panel is actually reserved the last part of the panel presentation to address those questions. And most important, for those of you who are technology challenged, there is a chat function at the bottom. You can click on that and select to chat directly to the host. If you put a little message in, Ashley will be able to help you with your technology problems, whether you're having audio or visual problems. So we are very pleased today to have the WIN Awards winners here with us. Not only does it give us an opportunity for us to get to know them better, but we'll find out what makes them so successful. This panel is moderated by Ann Stewart. Many of you know her. She has a distinguished career providing legal advice on some of the first and most significant infrastructure projects across Canada, of which she's received many numerous awards for. She is also an active contributor to the community and a strong promoter and advocate of diversity in infrastructure. She is a founding member of the BC WIN chapter and also the 2016 Outstanding Leader WIN Awards winner. And she has served as a role model and mentor to many of us. She is currently a retired partner at Blake's, but she continues to provide invaluable advice on many infrastructure projects. Anne, can I turn it over to you?
Thank you so much, Winnie. That's very nice. It is just so exciting to be here anytime I get an opportunity to promote women in infrastructure as a group of people and the Women's Infrastructure Network. I just think it's a fantastic thing to do. So my pleasure today is to start by introducing our panelists to you. You've seen the pictures on the video, but just a little more background information. And I'm going to keep this short because this is the classic case that if I went through the whole, everything I could tell you about these people and all that they're doing and all the awards they've won, we would be at 5 o'clock and or 6 o'clock and the program would be over. So first of all, I'd like to start with Tony Rossi. She was the 2020 winner of the Outstanding Leader Award. She is a 28-year commercial real estate professional, and she is the president of the Real Estate Division of Infrastructure Ontario. She leads the overall management of the provinces of Ontario's general real estate portfolio, which is absolutely huge, and provides realty advice, transaction, project, and other realty services to various public sector portfolios. If that wasn't enough, she's also a passionate community builder and volunteer fundraiser for many, and I mean many, not-for-profit organizations. And she's also on the board of numerous real estate related organizations. So, Tony, congratulations again on your award, and looking forward to your comments today. Next, I'd like to introduce Lindsay Wright, one of the 2 winners of the Emerging Leader Award. Got a little wave from Lindsay there. Lindsay is a senior manager in KPMG's infrastructure advisory practice with over 12 years experience providing strategic, financial, and commercial advice to a diverse mix of public and private sector clients. She's done work across a broad sector range in this industry: social infrastructure, defense, energy, but with a particular focus on transit and transportation. She specializes in delivering large, complex, city-changing infrastructure around the world. Worked on projects in Canada, the United States, the United Kingdom, and the Middle East. She's also passionate about improving the delivery of services to citizens and was instrumental in the development of the study, Finding the Courage to Improve, benchmarking city services. She also supports KPMG's Infrastructure's global inclusion and diversity initiatives, in particular mentoring and running numerous programs globally. She's also a co-chair of the Toronto chapter of the Women's Infrastructure Network. So congratulations, Lindsay, and looking forward to your comments today too. And last is Anna Brighton, who is also the co-winner of the Emerging Leader Award. At the time she won the award, she was the Vice President, Power, Utilities, and Infrastructure Investment Banking at RBC Capital Markets. Since then, she's had a promotion, and she's now a director at RBC Capital Markets. So congratulations, Anna, on that. With both sell-side and buy-side experience in capital markets, Anna is known as a leader in financial advisory and in debt structuring across transportation, energy, utility, and social infrastructure sectors. She's proficient in interpreting highly complex quantitative analyses and transforming that raw data into intelligent business strategies and providing valuable insights to help ensure strong and fully informed decision making. And I have to compliment anybody that can take all that information and make it understandable. So we need people like you. And has over 10 years of capital markets experience, 8 of which are in infrastructure. So those are our 3 panelists today. Welcome, all of you. Congratulations to all of you on your awards. And maybe I could just kick off by giving people a bit of an idea, an overview of what we're going to try and cover today. We want to start by talking about the inclusion and diversity in the infrastructure area in Canada. where we are, where we've been a little bit, and where we hope to go. We'd like to talk a little bit about what opportunities and obstacles COVID has given us this year, and whether we think there are any long-term effects. Third, we want to tell you a little bit about the scholarship program that we have for WIN Award winners. And lastly, we just want to talk a little bit about people's goals, dreams, thoughts for the future. So a lot to talk about. And I'm going to start with a discussion on inclusion and diversity. Winnie already introduced that as an important topic. And I think maybe if I could, I'd like to just start by trying to clarify what we mean by inclusion and what we mean by diversity. And Tony, you had a very succinct way of talking about that. Can I just ask you to share that with people?
For sure. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thanks very much, Anne, and congratulations to you as well for being an outstanding leader over the years and actually helping the diversity in infrastructure across Canada. Before I start with that, I thought, I don't know, but my award just arrived. It might have been just timing, but I literally just got this in the mail yesterday. So I thought, that is awesome. For those of you that, obviously we're on a virtual scene here, but it really is very humbling. And it's certainly, when I received it, it actually, it's quite a beautiful little glass award. So I know Lindsay and Anne also have a similar one, and also obviously Anne, you have one too. So it's here, and it is a very, very proud part of my desk, and I'm very happy to have received it. So thank you again for those that nominated. And I know Winnie had already talked about making sure that we continue to nominate. To me, that actually probably starts the dialogue on why we're here and what diversity is, and a bit of a definition there. And I would say, for all of us, like, diversity is truly a fact. It is a fact that about 50% of the population of the world are women. What the difference for me, and I think where we've started to have a huge dialogue on, is inclusion. Inclusion is not a fact. Inclusion is indeed a choice. And so if it is a fact that 50% of the population of the world is women, and it is a choice to want to include women in various aspects of industry, in various aspects of career, then what I think we're going to have a great dialogue on today is just how that has occurred over the years. Where are we at? Where are we at in our industry? Where are we at in society? What else do we need to do? And I know for many people, when you think about inclusion, it's not just inclusion of women. Again, diversity is a fact. 50% are men, 50% are women. But within that diversity, there is a whole host of us as peoples. And we all come with various perspectives. We all come with various backgrounds. We all come with various ways of wanting to present ourselves to the world, and we all come in different races. So inclusion, again, to me, is always a choice, and finding ways to eliminate those barriers to allow people to include, I think, is really an important distinction. But never forget, diversity is a fact, inclusion is a choice, and equity is indeed something that we all need to continually pursue.
Great, thank you. So maybe we could start by talking about how you get to the table. How do you also, after you get to the table, bring others to the table? Because it's a two-part process. It's one, getting there yourself, and then it's helping others. And Tony, I think, again, turn it over to you for just a second. You had an amazing story of your experience in our national sport.
So, when Lindsay and Anna and I were talking a little bit, Lindsay and Anna are just awesome. And in our discussion, we started talking about kind of how have we even got here? And I was reflecting and thinking, look, this is a fireside chat, so it's starting to get a bit more intimate and trying to get to know one another a little bit more. So instead of just talking career, I think I'd like to actually go back to, and I'm sure Lindsay and Anna will do similar. We go back to kind of those roots of how we in fact started to get to what I'll call the table. And for me, I was about 7 or 8 years old. And, frankly, I was the annoying little sister. My brother is 6.5, 7 years older than I am, and was always out. He's a huge sport guy. I was a tomboy by kind of trade, and so he'd be out playing hockey all the time. And I truly was always at his coattails and would be on the sidelines always. Well, one day, as luck would have it, the goalie didn't show up, and so here I was, the enthusiastic, exuberant kid who was always jumping up and down. So I got shoved in net. And so when you get put in net in a group of, 14-year-old guys who are shooting pucks at you, it's a way to get to the table. But I think the difference that occurred was I kept going back and I kept going back. So even to this day, one of my proudest moments is graduating from net to defense. But even prouder, the next year, what occurred was the sisters of many of those guys that were playing, they started to come, and I'd bring my friends and we'd all sit on the sidelines, but then we started to get in. So I think for all of us, one of the key things is, have a bit of the courage or the persistence or just the stupidity maybe of constantly being on the side and then and getting to the table and having those pucks shot at you, but then bringing others with and enjoying that together. Because the only way you can advance anything, you can't do it alone, and we can't do it with two. You need three or more.
Yeah, and I would also add, I don't think I was ever brave enough to go and goal at hockey ever. No matter what, who was bringing me along. But I think one of the other things that are really important around, getting someone in at the start of their career and making sure they feel like there's an opportunity there for them. So that is when you're recruiting, using things like gender blind language, reviewing adverts from that perspective, but also reaching out to more than just your usual schools or your usual sources of people and outside of maybe your initial network, and just offering people that opportunity, particularly when they're early on in their career, just really helps get people to the table and open that door for them, which may not have been as obviously opened in the past.
Anna, any thoughts?
I would say my advice would be just always keep an open mind. So don't have an idea of who should occupy a certain seat, before you run through the process. So don't set objectives as, well, the age should be about there. This is where they, I would imagine they went to one of the 3 schools like that. There could be this incredible candidate out there that doesn't look anything like you and anything like any other member of your team, who would be a superstar performer on your team and would complement the skill sets that your team currently doesn't have.
I think that leads to something else we wanted to raise, and that is the whole issue of unconscious bias. And Lindsay, I think you had some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I was going to say as well, I also think having that diverse perspective just adds strength to your team as well. Like, people coming from different backgrounds, different experiences, you're going to bring a different perspective that can only add value at the end of the day, because everyone's going to see, particularly around infrastructure, maybe you place different importance in different aspects. Maybe you view it a certain way that is just going to be different than anyone else's experience. And so not only will it be, they could be a superstar performer, but just a different perspective and viewpoint is going to strengthen that team. But unconscious bias is it's a really funny one. And even the fact that we're talking about it now, I think even maybe, 5-10 years ago, it wasn't necessarily part of the language we were using. But unconscious bias it can be so tricky. I don't think, for the majority of people, no one is going to maliciously trying to show bias or not include someone or not be inclusive, but that can make unconscious bias quite difficult to overcome, just because people aren't aware of doing it. And then also calling it out can seem like it's such a tiny thing, but as a collective whole, it can do damage or make people feel not welcome or included, and not able to speak up. So I think even just one of the things that combats unconscious bias is just an awareness. Being aware and being open to change, and just awareness is half the battle, to be honest, of trying to defeat that unconscious bias.
Lindsay, as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking of unconscious bias and how you're talking about it, meaning that people are already either aware or they are now open to that discussion. In many cases, and it actually might be a conscious bias, not because people are being intentionally exclusive, but because it has been the way that it has been.
Yeah.
And so you're not even aware. So you're consciously biased because you're actually, not even aware, and you've put things in place. So I will give a really great example. And here we're talking about wind, and we're certainly talking about infrastructure. But across many different industries, I think it's the same thing. And when we look at things like senior leadership and boards in terms of reference and bylaws and policies, that's really where it starts. Because let's be honest. I mean, over the years, many of those initial ways of interacting and governance has actually been created by a certain group of people. They've done a great job. Like, I have all kinds of respect for all of those that have gone before us, a lot of great men that have gone before us, and they were consciously writing things in play for the time. And so as we are starting to continually move along, and as more and more people are at, and we've called it the table, but it's certainly as more and more people are becoming aware, take a moment in your own organizations, in your own, not-for-profits, in your own associations, to just go back and read some of those bylaws. And I'll give you a prime example. I've recently been a part of the RealPAC board. RealPAC is the real estate industry, and it's been around for 50 years. So amazing. And it had very few women on that board for 50 years until recently. And not because those guys weren't awesome, because they were CEOs in our country and just amazing, open, amazing guys. But the bylaws were pretty clear. They were to go and have the most senior person in a real estate company, so a CEO or president, written in. Nobody even thought about it. So by just having those two words in there, there's very few women, or have been very few women over the years, that have been in those roles. So I share that as just a real crunchy and tactical example that 3 years ago there was only one woman ever that had been on the board, and I was able to join 3 years ago, and today there's 4 on the board, and after 50 years, we have a female chair. I just got elected chair this year, and a female vice chair. And it's because we consciously changed the bylaws. So I offer that as just a tactical in your conversation on unconscious. It's very true, but there is some conscious bias that I think we all need to kind of look out for.
Anna, anything you wanted to add to that? Don't have to, just if you wanted to. Give you an opportunity.
Right. Well, I would say in general, inclusion is sort of half of the problem. So I think getting the right people in the door, getting the balanced, diverse applicant pool, evaluating them without conscious or unconscious bias, is a first sort of step, an important step, because if you don't start with the right set, it's obviously where you're not going to get with the balanced or diversified pool of employees if you're starting already from undiversified sort of pool of candidates. But then I would say, reflecting on my own organization, some of the clients I work with, I think the problem is not only at attracting a diversified pool of candidates, but also retaining them. So I think that's where sort of it's even harder problem to tackle. I think retention, and especially retention of women. And I would say, based on my own experience, I would think people people sort of unconsciously gave me that sort of advice or an assumption. So I recently went on maternity leave, and then people sort of just automatically assumed, oh, you would want a year off. Well, I think just like infrastructure means different things to different people, I think flexibility means different things to different people. So what I wanted is flexibility so that during my mat leave, I don't have to, let's say, if I have a choice, but not an obligation, to join a deal that I've led or that I played a key role in. And if I'm walking in a park with my baby and I have nothing else to do, I have a choice to join it. And this is just really because when I am back, I don't have a wall of knowledge and information to get through once I'm back. Another example in the organization, what meant a flexibility for that particular woman was, I'm going to take a very short mat leave, but for the remainder of the year, I want to stay home and work from home. I mean, that's not an issue right now. It's not a conversation that needs to be had during the whole COVID experience because all of us are working from home. But I would say the conversation needs to be kept also not only at how do we become less biased, but also what do we do to keep women and keep the diversity that we've gained at a certain level and perpetuate it and gain more.
Yeah, I would say that's kind of, I think most of our organizations, definitely my organization, at more junior levels, we have a very diverse pool of people. I think we're maybe 50-50 or more women than men, which is a fantastic achievement. But I would say when you start looking up at more senior levels, that's when it becomes much less balanced in terms of gender diversity. And that's something that I think it just shows you that it's a problem that we're fixing slowly. Over time, I do honestly believe that we are going to have just naturally, the way people grow their careers, we're going to have a much more diverse infrastructure sector from the perspective of gender. But at the same time, I think it's very important. You look up and you see someone like you that has managed to make it work. They have their work-life balance, whatever that balance may be, but they have something that works for them. And it shows you it's possible. It's possible if you have children, if you don't have children, if you want to be partner, if you don't want to be partner, but you can make it work for you. And the thing is that we have some fantastic women in the Canadian infrastructure space. And that's, I think, one of the importance of something like WIN, that even if it's not in your own organization, you can come to something like a WIN event or the WIN Awards and just see some of the fantastic women that are shaping the space that we're in. And that's also something where we have our We Win mentoring program and things like that you have an opportunity, even if it's not just with your organization, to look up and see that it is possible to make a career that you want for yourself and the type of career that you want to grow in whichever way it is. And I think that's to Anna's point about flexibility. What success is to me is going to be very different than someone else. But that flexibility to define your career and what you want to make of it is going to be the key, I think.
I just want to jump in for just 1 sec, just to tell people that we are going to have questions and answers at the end of the session. Depending on how many we get, will govern the amount of time we give to questions and answers. So if you do have a question, go into the Q&A box. It should be on your screen, or as Winnie said earlier, if you go to the 3 little dots at the bottom, if it's not already open, bottom right hand corner, you should be able to open up the Q&A. Just type in a question and we'll do our best to answer it. If there's too many to answer in the time that we've got, we'll try our best to answer them in written form afterwards to the person who asked the question. So sorry, Tony, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, not at all. I actually wanted to do a jump off point on what both Anna and Lindsay were saying with respect to flexibility, with respect to actually now having that dialogue, and most employers, in fact, are open to that dialogue, which is great, and it's necessary. I also want to bring in it's not a reverse bias, but let me just share this. When I first started my career, and I have 3 children, so my first children were a set of twins, and in my household, I'm very lucky to have an amazing husband, an amazing partner, an amazing support network with my husband. At the time, though, it was not common that women would not take the mat leave. And what was less common was parental leave. Now, parental leave has kind of grown and expanded, but when you think about careers and you think about progression in careers and you think about flexibility and being able to do what you need to do for yourself, for your family, for your career, for your organization, it was interesting what some people would consider, because my husband, in fact, took a parental leave in a time when parental leaves were really not, the norm. I went back to work fairly quickly in a time when most women didn't go back to work fairly quickly. And it's, again, I think it's interesting in the reverse bias of an ability to be able to be in a workplace and not and be able to then do what you need to do. So Anna, you said it very well. What is it that works for you and your family? Lindsay, you said it very well. What is it that we can do to make sure that we have that flexibility and barriers? And I can tell you, and I know that you lived a similar experience, going through the workplace. I can tell you that is recent. That is not something that occurred even 10, 15, 20 years ago, and certainly not 25 and 30 years ago when probably Ann and I started our careers. So I think, we talked a little bit earlier about just constant progress, diversity, keep the doors open, not have barriers. We were going down the path of, one of the things on making sure that women can stay in that career zone. What are we doing to eliminate or to understand those barriers? If you take a look at some of the stats today, and both of you started going down the path of, it's 50-50 in most organizations at mid-management or entry, but it starts to really get a lot more of a dire situation when you get to senior. And that's what we need to start really putting our shoulders into as to the why. And everyone has a very visceral reaction when you start talking about measures and targets and quotas and all those words that make people, just go, ah! But there is a reality that if we are continually seeing that as an issue or a problem, and the facts are statistically in most industries, specifically in the infrastructure industry, and in the real estate industry, and in the financial services industry, and even in the legal industry, when you get to the top, that 50-50 is no longer there. So we have to find ways, as visceral and as awful and as ugly and as, the things that make you go, there needs to be an articulation of, I'll call it a problem if we've identified it as that, and finding ways to measure and move it. So I'd love to get your thoughts, on that, because I know whenever I speak of that, it gets visceral.
Sorry, go ahead.
Thanks, Anne. I would say for me, a prime example was, seeing somebody where I want to be. So, and I'm speaking about role models, and I'm going to get very specific here. So when I started working at RBC, I came from, even so much more male-dominated company where I used to work, and I rarely was taken to any important meetings. And here I am, starting as an associate with RBC, and my boss and role model, Vicky Turnbull, a 3-time nominee and 1-time winner of Win Outstanding Award last year, took me to that meeting. So I got prepared for the meeting, the topic that was discussed. I also ran through, the people who were at the meeting, and I was convinced that, those, 3 very senior men would be leading the discussions, and those are the people to look out for. And we got to the meeting, about 20 people type of meeting, huge room at one of the big law firms. And, Vicky and I are the only women there. And the person who I thought would lead the discussion and, dominate it even, what he did, he took careful notes of whatever Vicky was saying. She was the one who was leading the conversation, to whom everybody was just listening to her, whatever she said, people were nodding. And I thought, wow, I was really impressed. I felt proud. I felt proud by association. Not only was it just, wow, this is great. This is what I want to be. What I felt in that moment was, I'm gonna work really, really hard, to make her feel, something similar for me, to effectively earn her trust and respect. Because she was in my mind up there. And, I hope not many people from RBC are listening, but at the time, for me, her approval was so much higher on the list than, let's say, 10% increase in my compensation. So if they could pay me in, like Vicky saying, a good job, that would be preferred to me versus, a monetary pay. And I would say there should be many more people like that, I'm sure, for whom that non-monetary compensation would have been so much more rewarding. So I would say having somebody in your organization investing in a senior woman like Vicky Turnbull is just an investment that will produce a ton of economical sense. And will make our organization, I think, leaner, better, and it just was a great experience to have somebody like her to look up to.
Well, I can tell you, Vicky must have a smile about a mile wide on her face right now, and we just got a comment in the chat room, yay, Vicky. So I don't think you're alone in thinking how wonderful she is. Can we just use this as a bit of a jumping off point to talk about something that I think is really related? We hear about terms, but sometimes it's not all that clear what they mean. We hear about having mentors. We hear about having sponsors / champions, and we hear about allies. So I think what you were talking about, Anna, in a way, was both Vicky being your mentor and in a way also being your sponsor or champion, because she gave you the opportunity to be there. But would one of you like to talk, or a combination of you like to talk about what those terms mean? In particular, allies, because that's a relatively new term that we're hearing in some of these working relationships. Anybody want to volunteer?
Lindsay, why don't you start, and then I'll jump in after.
So I would say I do still have some incredible mentors that have helped me kind of shape my career and work out where I want to go with it. I would say I would literally say multiple mentors. So I actually have quite a few, both internal and external, to KPMG. And I'll go to one or more of them with any of my queries to get their different perspectives, depending on the situation, or if I need some tough love or some sympathy, depending on who it is and their personality. I'd say mentors are really ones where you bounce ideas off, they give you advice. You can have a very candid conversation with your mentor. The best mentors to me are the ones that can have a tough conversation with you and deliver maybe a hard to hear message, because that's the only way you improve. But I would also say everyone needs a sponsor or a champion, particularly as you get to a more senior space. And that is someone that's going to help advocate for you, that's going to, potentially give you some tips and tricks on how to talk yourself up, or, help you make those connections to other people that you maybe need to have in your network, or, at least even know you exist sometimes. So I think, and I think especially as you become more senior, and especially as a woman, I think having that sponsor or mentor can be incredibly important, particularly, when you see research has shown that if a woman, for instance, is advocating for themselves, particularly around pay or something, they get interpreted as pushy and potentially are penalized more. And so having someone there, a sponsor champion, also fighting in your corner and advocating for you in your career, that's a really key relationship to grow. And it has to be, you know, a mentor can be someone that's more junior than you, more senior than you in your firm, and not like completely different career potentially. Your sponsor champion also needs to be someone that, particularly if you're staying in that firm, I think needs to be able to understand the inner workings, understand those relationships, and help induct you into that, you know, those types of conversations and that language that you're also, and the behaviors you're going to need to learn potentially to find that stage.
Okay, Tony, maybe can you talk a bit about that and also maybe allies?
Yeah. So look, Lindsay, I think you actually hit the nail on the head with respect to, you know, the different types of people that you need both in your life and in your career, and mentorship and mentees. I think what I might jump off a little bit and also suggest, you know, allies are, to me, a very interesting concept. So WIN, as an example, is a group of allies. It is a group of individuals who have found a way to help each other, to help move a needle along. It is a group that is somewhat homogeneous right now, if we think about it as a group of women, but it was needed because you needed allies and friends and ambassadors and supporters to then help you be able to say, okay, look, you know, like how can I and what can I do? And I think most associations start that way. The other thing that I think allies do really well is they in fact then take that support network, for want of a better word, and bring it to their workplace, bring it to their home, bring it to their community, bring it to society at large. And Anna, then what occurs is those allies that are, you know, become the support network amongst each other, senior or junior, then actually make an impact in their organization to those coming in. And an ally can be as as wonderful a role model as you just talked about, or an ally can be somebody that is sitting, you know, halfway across the country in BC that you can pick up the phone and say, hi, I need your help to help me get this deal done. And sometimes bringing these kinds of great organizations like WIN together, that helps in the ally ambassador. So I think, Lindsay, you did a great job on this kind of the difference between mentors and sponsors, and even in fact champions is, I think, what you were talking about, Anna. But don't underestimate the power of an ally being through somewhat of an organized grouping. And, you know, we're organized now through WIN, but there's many other examples. And I know all of you are all, you know, and those that are on the line, you're all a part of different associations and organizations. So broaden that perspective and be an ally to somebody. Allies be to you.
And I think men can often be wonderful allies. They can also be mentors, and they can be sponsors or champions as well. And being an ally is more than just not being negative to somebody, and it's more than not being neutral. It's being positive. It's being proactive to try and help people. We've got a couple of related questions that maybe I could just throw out to you. How do you feel about people feeling that it's appropriate to ask women how they manage their work-life balance, but men are almost never questioned about it? Anyone want to answer that one?
I mean, I would say I hope that's slowly changing. It's definitely still something that people feel we are able and allowed to ask these types of questions about women rather than men. I think that is slowly changing. I'm seeing, you know, more and more of my male team members are, you know, they'll take pat leave. They are leaving, you know, on time so they can go pick up their kids from school, and there is more of an awareness around them having to have a work-life balance and actually wanting to have that too. But yeah, I think it's a potentially slow change that comes with just cultural change as well, about what's really an okay question to ask someone. But yeah, it's
I actually think
yeah.
Sorry, Lindsay, I thought you were done.
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I actually think COVID has been that equalizer. I think when you've got everybody in the same situation, all of a sudden we're all vulnerable. We all have our work, our life is exposed to most. everyone is seeing, you in your bedroom or wherever you are, but also, your dogs are barking, your kids are crying, your fire alarm is going off. And I think what occurs is COVID has probably been a catalyst to me to be able to equalize those kinds of questions, because it's no longer just me or you or some female in the household having to run around and get things done either for daycare, elder care, pet care, apartment fire care. It's everybody in that household.
We wanted to talk a little bit about the impacts of COVID, what opportunities and obstacles have resulted from COVID, and what we think the long-term effects are. So you've just opened the door to that. So thank you, Tony. That's perfect. Any other thoughts on it?
I would say for me personally, the COVID year was the one with many milestones. So I had to navigate it, and it certainly was interesting. And at first was sort of frightening. Okay, great. On top of everything now, it's a lockup situation. First one was for me was grateful, was a successful year in that respect, that it was my promotion year. And at my organization, the people responsible for making a promotion decision are not the people you work with. So they would know that on the deal X, I did very wonderfully, and I saved client a bunch of money and all of that stuff. They just wouldn't have that information. So it's really about self-promotion, somewhat about having the right sponsors or allies who would advocate for you. But a lot of work you kind of need to do yourself. So I would say in just thinking about how do I approach people with whom I don't have a good reason for a day-to-day interaction. So they could be people in a very different function, in a different sector. And once I've done it once, it became so much easier than it would have been had I been in the office. Really, I think it's too bad that it took a pandemic to realize that, oh, you know what, to meet one person who is in New York, I don't have to jump on a plane. So we can actually do the same thing, virtually. So that was initially sort of an inconvenience, but once people start adopting and accepting this is totally fine in terms of how we can deal with it. We don't have to postpone that lunch or the coffee that we had. We can actually have a fruitful conversation, right now over video. And I think there has been a general acceptance that it's fine to have. Other positives for me, like I said, I was in a mat leave, so I was pregnant during COVID. So it had many positives. So I didn't have to buy super ugly maternity clothing that some of you might be familiar with. So I didn't have to invest in that, which is great. And didn't have to wear all of my shoes, and 1% of which are comfortable. And the 99% of them are, uncomfortable with fairly high heels. So I didn't have to, worry about that and convincing myself that it's fine, I can do it. So it was really, an experience where things really worked out for me, and something that wasn't intended to be sort of something that presented an opportunity, didn't look perfect, but totally worked out for me.
Yeah, I think COVID has almost been the great equalizer from some perspectives. Pre-COVID, I was on a plane, 3 weeks out of the month, depending on which projects I was on at any one time. I traveled a lot. This is the most I've been in one place for the whole 12 years of my career, which that was a big adjustment, remembering to cook for myself and plan, things to do in my own apartment. But I would say having everything virtual, I think, yes, Tony is right. There's been a lot more empathy for just people's day-to-day lives, and and what they're having to do on the side, whether that's look after a parent, look after children, dogs, or whatever it may be. But in terms of actually that equalizing factor, it means that I think more people have the same opportunity in meetings. I've also been that voice on the phone, which is really hard to read the temperature of the room, to know when to jump in. That is no longer an issue. And I'd also say it means that maybe more people can come to meetings. So I can bring maybe a junior along who wouldn't have been able to come before because travel costs, but they can be there. They can listen. Because a lot of the great experiences I've learned about is because I've been in the room and just got to listen and be a bit of a sponge, learning as I go. I say the one thing I am conscious of, I lead the kind of training for our team nationally, and I think because of that on-the-job training, one of the things that will become more important is that mentor relationship, or just being aware that some of your more junior staff members who are maybe starting their career, they are not necessarily going to overhear something or be dragged into an office just to talk through an idea and learn on the job as much. They're not necessarily going to be able to be comfortable phoning up a partner with 30 odd years experience and ask them a question, which they may have been able to learn in the past. So I think we will have to have that that conscious effort to really help our newer people in the team learn things, make sure we're including them, and kind of bring them along in their careers so that they may not have had because we're not sitting right next to them. But overall, I think, COVID has been that great flexible equalizer, if nothing.
There is one related question we've got, which is, and then we're going to have to move on because we're running out of time, but what is one piece of advice you would give to someone starting off their career amidst this pandemic?
Coffee chats. And don't be afraid to phone up and ask questions. I found without fail throughout my entire career that generally people are more than happy to try and help. And we're all, infrastructure geeks. We all like to talk about all of our, our careers and ourselves and things we've learned and share that wisdom. So I would just keep on asking questions and set up those coffee chats with people. Because people are more than happy to help 99% of the time.
I would say ask for more. So ask for more than what you think you can do. Find that person that assignment that is not, critical, and demonstrate that you can deliver on something that is just beyond your current capabilities. Those stretch assignments is effectively something where there is no time to think, oh, what should I have for dinner tonight? It consumes you all. It takes all of your faculties to figure something out. So try to find something like that is beyond your current understanding, knowledge, capabilities, and try to prove you can do it.
I think for me, one of the things that I've seen as a kind of a senior person in our organization is people are I think COVID, what it has done is it has made the senior team appear more accessible. We've always been accessible. I would say most leaders in most organizations, their prime role and job and their desire is to, in fact, help those that are new in the organization, or help develop new leaders, or ensure that stretch assignment is done to actually make them, their employees and their colleagues better and their company better. I think what COVID has actually done is it's allowed that. And Lindsay, it's because, for whatever reason, I don't know who asked the question, but I think it's really important that just remember people are people first, and people actually want you to succeed, and leaders want you to succeed. So you will succeed if you actually just treat those with, and I think COVID has done that. It is the equalizer, but it is also the empathizer, and it has made people more real and more accessible.
We did get one other. We had optimistic about how much we could cover. One of the things was our scholarship program that WIN has for the award winners. And I think instead of us talking about that here, we'll get everyone to talk about what they're going to do, and we can post that online. The other thing that we were going to talk about is kind of our dreams for the future. But I have to ask this question because I think this is probably all our dreams for the future. Somebody asked the question, now that women leadership is increasing, any comments on the complexity of the layering intersectionality of our social identities beyond just being women by so beyond gender, getting into race, ethnicity, social class, socioeconomic, sexual orientation, abilities, disabilities, religion, beliefs, opening up the door, as Tony described it, that inclusion is a choice. What can be done to help take this all to the next level in terms of broader inclusivity? And maybe if each of you could just give something short on that, and then we're going to have to call it a day.
Holy Ann, how do you give something short? That is an unbelievable existential question. Okay,
well, maybe we have to save it for another one. Maybe we should have another one of these chats and talk about that, and everybody could have more time thinking about it. But it is a nice note to stop on and give everybody, let everybody think about that.
Yeah, I do have one thing, and maybe this might be helpful, is because we're all here as kind of as a group through WIN, I think the one thing that we can all do is start to do a little bit more interconnectedness amongst ourselves and other groups. And I guess just even from a leadership perspective, whether it's other organizations, we're all going through this together. Like, this is a societal shift, thankfully, but it is hard. It's hard work. It's hard emotionally. It's hard to really understand people's perspectives, and it's hard to change. And so I think giving people a little bit of grace and allowing people to ask the questions and be wrong, and then working through it. So that's a great question, but I think, Anne, God love us, like, that is another day.
Yeah, I think we should save that and have a whole session on that. One other last question, and then we call them. What's one piece of advice you can offer for females who experience imposter syndrome, and was also known as Cinderella syndrome, psychological pattern in which an individual doubts their skills, talents, and accomplishments, especially working in a male-dominant industry?
I mean, that's a tough one. I think I've definitely experienced it, still do, depending on what task I'm doing. One piece of advice I got given was just fake it till you make it. And all of a sudden you'll realize you've achieved it, and it is what it is. I would say other things that have really helped me is doing that preparation. So Anna talked about that, preparing for that meeting so that you feel like you've at least got your base there. Don't be afraid to say, I don't know, I'll get back to you, because that's also a completely legitimate response to a question, to go and do your homework. And then I think also something else someone mentioned to me was keep that folder, and this is really good if you're ever doing a year-end feedback session, but keep a folder of things where people have said that, great job, something, a compliment that someone's paid you, an achievement you've made, and have that there that you can always just check it if you need that boost in confidence. That's some of the advice I've given. It works to different degrees depending on how much I'm feeling like an imposter. I think
it's a great one, Lindsay. I think also on the flip side, you can just be honest, and let's say you go but say, well, I don't understand this concept, or I worked with a lot of people who were senior people, a lot senior than me, suggesting, okay, can you walk me through that idea? It's a little bit too mathy for me. Can you please elaborate on this? And or a client who's a bit more senior who should understand this, but they didn't, but they were honest about it, and I broke it down for them, and so they don't have to feel like they're fakers, because now they understand. So they went into somebody they trusted, and they got the answers that they needed. Or let's say if somebody, like one of my analysts, really didn't feel confident about a certain area of knowledge, and we took steps last year to work on it, and she's there right now.
It's funny. My daughter recently finished a business school, so this was one of, not quite exactly the same question, but similar. In in business school, they always ask about what's good leadership, how do you not fake it, what do you do in management, all the rest of it. So of course, she came to me, and you can't BS your own kid. So we spent a little bit of time together, kind of thinking about maybe not the specific question, but just kind of the factors for success, or the factors for leadership. And maybe this could be I'll wrap mine up in my 20 to 26 goals, because it became a bit of a mantra now. So Kenzie and I use it a lot. And we call it our ABCDs of kind of success factors and leadership factors. And maybe I'll share it with you. So the A stands for authentic action. And Anna, you talked a little bit about that. Be authentic in what you're doing, be vulnerable, be real, and go through. The second one is boundless belief. And I think, Lindsay, you talked a little bit about that, which is fake it till you make it. Like, you have to believe in yourself to do it. The C for us was courageous curiosity. And I think that really speaks to what we're kind of talking about tonight, inclusion. Ask those questions. Be curious. It's okay to be wrong, but be courageous about doing that. The D for us stood for, I'm a Da Vinci and I love that Renaissance, so it stood for Da Vincian doing. You actually have to do. You have to get out there and do it. And attitude breeds behavior, but behavior also changes attitude. And then the E was everyday excellence. Leave your environment better than you found it. Just do your best every day and try and be a little bit better. So that's my goals for the next bit, but it was kind of it prompted me to remember that. So thank you for sharing that question.
I think that's maybe a perfect way to end this, if everyone's okay. I would like to congratulate all three of you again. Thank you for taking the time today. It's only an hour that we're on screen here, but I'd like everyone to know how much work goes in behind the scenes to get this done. The four of us plus other people organizing this had three different meetings last week, earlier this week, earlier today, and behind the scenes there were numerous people, and I'm going to single out two, but I know there were a lot of other people. Leslie Griffiths and Winnie Shee were very, very instrumental in getting this all organized, so I want to thank them very, very much. Just to remind you to nominate people for the 2021 awards. The nomination date, again, is February 15th. The event date, which will be virtual again, is scheduled for April 29th. And now that we've talked about diversity, inclusion, expand your scope on who you think might be a good person to nominate. They don't need to be in your organization. They can be in an organization that you run into in your work. They don't have to be in your province. They can be anywhere you want them to be. And the nomination process, I've nominated several people. It's not an intimidating process. It's actually a very satisfying process to sit down and just think about what makes someone that you are working with in some capacity very special. And I'd also like to say that even if you nominate someone and they don't win, they have still won, because somebody that cared about them took the time to put a nomination package together. And it's a pretty special thing for people to take time to do that. So I encourage you all to nominate. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And thanks again to the panelists, and congratulations again. Bye, everybody. Thank you.